Good morning. This is Scott Fletcher.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. The time's 10 o'clock on the dot. The meeting is recording, and it looks like Commissioner Feinstein is with us. I do not see Commissioner Pennington. Commissioner Pennington, are you here?
I am here.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, all three commissioners are present. We may begin.
Very good. Thank you. I hereby call to order this meeting of the Arizona Boxing and Mixed Martial Arts Commission. Today is Wednesday, September 18th, 2024, and the time is 10:01 a.m. With those commissioners that are in attendance, please identify themselves and state as to whether they are here in person or via telephone or via Google Meets.
This is Joe Pennington. I'm participating by telephone.
And this is Eric Feinstein. I'm here via Google Meet.
Thank you both. I am Scott Fletcher. I am here via telephone. B is our new business, and B1 is pursuant to ARS sections 5-227, 5-228, and AAC R19-2-C604 for combatants who are at least 38 years old. The new license application submitted by Mr. Yanfrez Parejo for a 2024 professional boxer license. Mr. Bello, you speak to Mr. Parejo's application, please.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I just want to state real quickly that you may notice the verbiage is a little different there, where it now says for combatants who are at least 38 years old, and also the citations to the statutes. With the updated statutory language, 5-227 and 5-228 now indicate 38 years old, and AAC still currently says 36 years old, but with the statute, the opinion of the agency is that the statute prevails over the rule. So that is why the updated language is there. With that said, Mr. Parejo is 24-6. He's a professional boxer. He's 38 years old, and his last bout was in 2023. He lost by unanimous decision in his last bout, but he's been training very hard according to the questions that he answered for us. He says that he trains every day from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. He runs each night and sometimes in the morning, and he spars 3 times a week. He says that he thanks God because he feels really good, and he knows that the commitment that he has, and that it's going to be a difficult fight, but not impossible for him. He comes with all the desire in the world. And he has not experienced any injuries recently, and he says that thank God he has not suffered any injuries. With that, sir, he is scheduled to compete against Sebastian Reyes, who's 16-0, and that bout is scheduled for this Friday on the top rank card. With all that said, I do recommend Mr. Parejo's approval.
Thank you. Gentlemen, commissioners, questions regarding Mr. Parejo's application?
Mr. Chairman, I have no questions.
Thank you.
No questions for me, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. The chair would be open to a motion if one exists.
Mr. Chairman, I move that pursuant to ARS 5-227, excuse me, 5-228, and AAC R19-2-C604, that we grant a professional boxing license to Mr. Yanfrez Parejo for a 2024 license for a fighter over age 38, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Commissioner. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0. Congratulations, Mr. Parejo. We look forward to Friday night. B2 is pursuant to AAC R19-2-B602, the request for a 5-round Muay Thai welterweight state championship contest submitted by Yukon LLC between Tyler Shaw and Jose Aquino on October 12th, 2024. Mr. Bello, you speak to this, please.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. This is history in the making, as we've not had a state championship bout for Muay Thai in the past. But I had the pleasure of watching these two compete against each other in December of last year. and it was a very, very competitive bout. I'll say that, and one that definitely warrants the rematch warrants having a state title on the line. With that said, we don't have a Muay Thai state championship belt yet. So the at least my idea is to utilize our MMA state belt and modify it for this belt temporarily, modify it for Muay Thai, and then eventually, as long as we have the resources within the budget to procure a Muay Thai belt, then down the line we look forward to attempting to do that. But long story short, Mr. Shaw and Mr. Aquino are both very, very talented Muay Thai fighters. Shaw is 2-1 as a professional, and Aquino is 3-1 as a professional. Shaw is 29 years old. Aquino is 36 years old. They would be competing at welterweight at 147, and they're both Arizona residents. And again, very, very competitive. And I think this would be a great state championship contest. I do believe we have Mr. Aoki on the line. He's the promoter that's looking to put this together. If you had any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Vella. Mr. Aoki, welcome. This is an exciting thing. I'm excited to see what you're contemplating. Commissioners, your thoughts regarding a Muay Thai state championship?
I think it's a great development for us here in Arizona to have a state championship. I think we've seen growth in Muay Thai, and I'm supportive of this idea and the show.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Pennington, any thoughts?
Mr. Chairman, I too am supportive of this whole idea, but I would like to hear from Mr. Aoki on what his plans are, how he plans to proceed.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Aoki, are you with us? You may be
Yes.
muted. Oh, yeah,
Yes.
please.
Good morning.
will you
Good
speak?
morning.
Thank you for joining us. Will you please speak to
Absolutely.
this?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for having me on this meeting today. And yeah, so this having a show coming up on October 12th. And like Mr. Danny says, that both fighters is very, very talented fighters, competitive. Even they have a 3-1 and 2-1 record as a pro. They do have over 20 amateur fights, and it's a very, very competitive a record. So I definitely think that that's going to be a great, great match.
Well, thank you. It's very exciting. I've always been a proponent of state championships, be it boxing or MMA, and now Muay Thai. I think it's a great thing. So I appreciate you pursuing this. Commissioners, any other thoughts for Mr. Aoki?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. How many bouts do you plan on having on the card?
I'm having right now we're scheduled to have 3 pro bouts. We're gonna have the main event to be a WBC Muay Thai national title fight, and the co-main event, which is I'm planning to have a Tyler Shaw with Jose Aquino for the state title. And I have another pro that is two fighters that coming from other states. I think one is from Virginia and one is from California. And yeah, so far we have 3 pro bouts on that day.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. If there are no other thoughts, the chair would be open to a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move pursuant to AAC R19-2-B602 that we have a 5-round Muay Thai welterweight state championship contest submitted by UCAN LLC between Tyler Shaw and Jose Aquino on October 12, 2024.
Mr. Chairman, I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0. Congratulations, Mr. Aoki. I'm glad you're doing this. We look forward to your upcoming event.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us. We appreciate your time. Item C is our information reports. C1 is our event reports. The following events were conditionally approved by the executive director from August 22nd to September 16th, 2024. The first was a request from UCAN LLC for approval of a Muay Thai event to be held at the Glendale Civic Center in Glendale, Arizona on Saturday, October 12th, 2024. The second is a request from Iron Boy Combat Sports LLC for approval of a private boxing event to be held at the Scottsdale Airport in Scottsdale, Arizona on Thursday, October 17th, 2024. The third is a request from Rise Combat Sports LLC for approval of an MMA event to be held at the Rialto Theater in Tucson, Arizona on Saturday, November 2nd, 2024. The fourth is a request from Iron Boy Combat Sports LLC for approval of a boxing event to be held at the Celebrity Theater in Phoenix, Arizona on Saturday, November 2nd, 2024. And the fifth is a request from Legacy Fighting Alliance LLC for approval of an MMA event to be held at the Arizona Financial Theater in Phoenix, Arizona on Friday, November 8th, 2024. Item C2 is event reports continued. Due to a potential conflict of interest, the following event was conditionally approved by and will be administered by Assistant Director Juan Carlos Estrada. That event is a request from Del Sol Boxing Promotions LLC for approval of a boxing event to be held at the American Royal Palace in Phoenix, Arizona on Saturday, October 12th, 2024. That's a nice list of new events, Mr. Bella.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. And if you don't mind, I do have a statement regarding C2.
Please.
So, Mr. Chairman, I am related to a boxer who may be competing on the Del Sol boxing card on October 12th, 2024. Therefore, a potential conflict of interest exists if I were to perform my duties as the executive director of the Division of Boxing and Mixed Martial Arts, specifically relating to that event on October 12th, 2024. Therefore, the director of the Arizona Department of Gaming has appointed Assistant Director Juan Carlos Estrada as the interim executive director to perform duties prescribed by Title V, Article 2, specifically relating to the October 12th, 2024 Del Sol boxing card. Accordingly, the duties as the executive director of the division of the boxing and mixed martial arts will be carried out by Assistant Director Juan Carlos Estrada, specifically regarding the October 12th, 2024 Del Sol boxing card. Should the commission, licensees, or any member of the public have questions or concerns regarding this matter, please contact Idania Felix at 602-364-1721 or via infobox@azgaming.gov. I retain all duties of the executive director as to all matters pending before the division and the Arizona Boxing and MMA Commission, other than the October 12th, 2024 Del Sol boxing card. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. I appreciate you laying that all out. There is an interesting Muay Thai event in Glendale that night too, if you're bored.
That is correct. I will be overseeing the event in Glendale, the Muay Thai.
Okay, very good. In fact, of these 6 events we just talked about, there's a couple overlapping. You comfortable with an MMA event and a boxing event on November 2nd?
That is correct. We'll have an MMA event down in Tucson and a boxing event here in Phoenix. With that said, of course, I think that it's worth highlighting the wonderful job that our staff has done. With so many recently, we've had some double events, either 2 events in the same weekend or 2 events in the same day. And our small but mighty staff has done a tremendous job carrying out our duties. And
Very
I'm very
good.
grateful for the work that they've done, specifically Juan Estrada, Norma Rivero, and Idania Felix. So shout out to them.
Great folks, small but mighty. That's our motto. Oh, good for you. Thank you. Let's press on. Pursuant to ARS Section 38-431.02, notice is hereby given to the general public that commission members of the Arizona Boxing and MMA Commission may be in attendance at the aforementioned events. As such, a quorum of the commission may be present. The commission members will not be discussing business unless necessary to do so by means of an emergency ringside meeting as authorized by ARS Section 5-223. That leads us into C3, which is a discussion about commission member expenses. Mr. Vella, will you lead us on this?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I recommend that we enter executive session to discuss this matter.
Okay, then why don't we do that? The chair would entertain a motion to enter executive session.
Mr. Chairman, we've got several other items on the agenda that will be open to the public. Should we just postpone the executive session until after or after item number 6?
That's a good question, Commissioner. Mr. Vella, there was a reason to put this in at number 3, wasn't there?
Mr. Chairman, it shouldn't be an issue. We had just staff wanted to make sure that we were able to address any matters, but that's okay. If you'd like to postpone it till later, it seems it will be okay to do that.
Okay, why don't we
I'm
table
just-
that and start-
I'm
Yeah,
just thinking of the public and everybody else attending, so.
No,
Yeah, I would
I
agree.
appreciate that,
I
Commissioner. I
would
think that
agree with
makes sense.
Commissioner Pennington.
Very good. Let's table item 3 and we'll circle back to it, which leads us to item 4, the bare knuckle discussion. Commission members David Feldman, Dr. Don Moosey, Dr. Ken Oda, and Sean Wheelock, and/or the executive director may discuss the medical data of bare knuckle fighting. Mr. Vella, will you lead this talk if you would?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. The BKFC has been gracious in providing us with data relating to this, and that's been sent to commissioners. They did send some more updated information and so on. So I'd like to turn it over to them, and I'd also like to give Dr. Oda an opportunity to discuss his findings in the data, and just have an open discussion so that the commission and the public and everybody is aware of what's being presented to us.
Great, Danny. Thank you so much. My name is David Feldman. I'm the founder, president of Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship. We started Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship, became a legal regulated sport June 2nd, 2018 in the state of Wyoming. Since then, we have become legal in over 30 states in the United States and are promoting events in over 12 countries around the world. I will leave the medical data up to Dr. Don Moosey, who I will turn it over to in a moment. Just to go through, we're very, very popular now, fastest growing combat sport in the world. We have some of the top fighters in the world that are fighting for our promotion. We continuously sell out our venues anywhere from 4,000 to 12,000 seats, depending on the level of fighters and the level of popularity of the fighters that we have. We have recently entered into a deal with DAZN to air our fights on DAZN, and we're talking to another major network now at this time. We have a fairly good amount of fighters that fought for us from Arizona. I did fights about 10 years ago at the Fort McDowell Casino with the Yavapai Nation for about 7 or 8 years back then. And I was able to make a lot of great contacts in Arizona, and I think to be very, very successful here. And we can get, this all around the world with our contract that we have with DAZN. We would love for the Arizona State Commission to allow us to promote events in the state of Arizona, where I think we can do very, very well at. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Don Moosey, who can go over our medical data and can kind of explain the injuries and all the medicals that we do for Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship. Don.
I think that Don is muted.
Don, can you unmute, please? He fell off.
Mr. Chairman, we'll give Dr. Moosey just a second. He hopped off. It looks like he's going back in.
Fair enough. Let's sit tight for a moment. Should we give the floor to Dr. Oda?
Perhaps, Dr. Oda?
Sure. Yeah, guys, thank you very much for inviting me to this meeting. I with great interest, I looked at the data that Dr. Muzi sent over. And truth be told, I've actually seen the preliminary, this very similar preliminary data, gosh, I want to say 2 years ago, maybe more actually. And I do, the data does look very similar to what I have seen in the past with respect to injuries. And what I was actually very fascinated to see is that when you compare the number of types of injuries to boxing and MMA, you do find some similarities. Specifically, where I was, what I found interesting was that the rate of concussion was actually lower in bare knuckle, in these bare knuckle events. And I would imagine that probably has something to do with the fact that the hits that are taken to the head with bare knuckle, just the repetitive nature that you have with the gloves in MMA. Of course, Dr. Muzi can speak more to this and his theory, but I would imagine that the protective effect of the gloves to the hands gives the fighter more opportunity to deliver more strikes to the head. I'll have him speak more on that. But that was very interesting to me. Of course, what we do see in this data set is that the number of facial lacerations in comparison are significantly higher in bare knuckle boxing than MMA. So what I would like to know, and I don't know if the president can answer this question until Dr. Muzi gets on, but what does the physician support look like given that facial laceration rate is higher? And I would imagine maybe the complexity of the facial lacerations also are different too. Maybe lacerations that require layered closure, perhaps even lacerations that require transfers out to the hospital. I'm not sure about this, and I'm wondering if we can get some more insight on that part of it.
Yeah, Ken, I'm on right now. Can y'all hear me? Had a little trouble connecting.
Oh, great.
Yeah, Ken,
Welcome,
first, it's
doctor.
nice to
Thank
hear you again, to speak with you again, Ken. Okay, I think the first question I heard was about medical support. There's usually at least one, and I always suggest, especially when we go to a new commission, that you have two doctors that are just dedicated to doing laceration repair. I mean, we have our cut rate's about 35% to the that require a repair. Now that's an average, and sometimes it's a little more, sometimes a little less. So regard to the complexity, yeah, they do require layered closures. I do know that our average, and I know this doesn't medically, this may not make a lot of sense to a physician, but I had to quantitate the degree of the laceration somehow, so I did it by number of stitches. Our average number of stitches really hasn't changed. It's about 8 stitches that the average fighter gets. I would guess, Ken, and I don't have this data at hand, but probably about half of them are layered closures that require some a few deep stitches as well as the skin stitches. We've generally had, and myself, besides a neuroanesthesiologist, I'm oral maxillofacial surgeon, I'm able to handle those stitches. We've had ENT and plastic surgeons can do it. We have ER doctors, which have had no problems doing it. The ones that we've sent to the hospital, offhand, there's been something less than 10. And those are generally that involve critical areas. We have a few that have been through the eyelid, 3 that I can recall. We've also, and that just, without getting the medical aspects, that's difficult to do in the back room. We'd have a couple, Ken, that are near the nasolacrimal duct. And in order to prevent for those that are non-medical, that's just right at the corner of the eye here. We don't want to ligate that duct or put a stitcher on that duct. So we'll send that in the hospital where a probe can be placed. So Ken, it's something much less than 1% of our cuts are set and sent into the hospital. In fact, it's probably in single digits. If that's enough on the lacerations, I can speak to the concussion questions that you had as well. Are you guys good to go with that?
Oh yeah.
Yes, please,
You
Doctor.
answered my questions. Thank you very much. I'd be interested to learn more about what you have here.
Yeah. So let's in terms of concussions, our concussion rate is about 4.8%. And it's easy enough to remember the rule of thirds because the concussion rate in MMA is about 4.7 and boxing is about 12%. So just think it's about roughly about a third of what you see in boxing and mixed martial arts. And Ken, you hit it right on the spot. And what happens is there's two reasons I think why our concussion rate is lower. One is I'll just call the acute blow, like the strike that causes a concussion. One can't just generate as much force. I've seen the sport evolve over the last 5 or 6 years, and the targets have become limited in the head. They're really from the, I'll say from the brow to the chin. You can't do that big overhand right to the top of the head because they know that they're going to injure their hand that way. And we tend to see more body shots as well. Also, besides the force of the blow, it's an exposure issue. Our fights are 5 2-minute rounds that go to decision. You compare that with 5 5-minute rounds or excuse me 12 3-minute rounds. That's much less exposure. And as we all know, the more repetitive blows, the more you get set up for a concussion. So it's simply an issue of force of the impact, as well as the the exposure to the to repetitive head blows. Did I answer your questions, Ken? I think I recalled them all.
Yes, actually, that was an interesting point that I wasn't thinking of myself. So more having to do with the exposure of time rather than just the nature of the I suppose what I was referring to with the gloves, being more comfortable to take repetitive shots.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you're spot on. I even think, it's a leap for me to talk about chronic brain injuries versus acute. And for the non-medical people, acute means it's temporary related to the blow. Chronic is what happens decades later. We know that the number one risk factor in developing chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or punch drunk, if you would, is exposure. So I would speculate, although this study will not be completed in my lifetime, or likely not in Ken's either, because we'd have to collect a tremendous amount of data, that the chronic brain injury should be lower in people and athletes that are just doing bare knuckle, because the exposure to blows is just less.
Thank you, Doctor. Very helpful. We are, this is Scott Fletcher. We're a commission that's focused greatly on fighter safety. I've tried to watch as many of your events as I can, and I'm impressed with how quickly fights get ended. And exposure, I think, is critically important. It's not the 1 or 2 shots that end a fight that are damaging. It's someone absorbing 12 rounds of 20 significant shots, is my opinion anyway. One question I had is, when individuals I know break hands a fair amount of the time, as you mentioned, do those fights get stopped? Do we soldier on? What do we do when we break a hand?
Generally, if I know the hand is fractured, I will stop the fight, because the fighter can't deliver blows and it just has difficulty protecting themselves. That's easier to pick up in a bare knuckle event than it is in, say, a full glove boxing event, where the hand can be fractured. You're just not going to see it. You're not going to be able to examine it because it's gloved and wrapped. So yes, the fights have been stopped for hand fractures, and we don't let them just soldier on. That being said, you can miss them. As a ringside physician, if the fighter isn't being totally forthright with you, you can miss them. But generally, it's easy enough to pick up with the referee and the doctor in communication that there is something that isn't quite right with the fighter. And if I could speak to just one more thing, Andy Glenn and I have talked about this, and Big Dan, quite a bit. Bare knuckle, and Ken, this would speak to you, requires much more interaction with the referee and the physician than does mixed martial arts or boxing, because of these things we're talking about, the acuteness of the injuries and the cuts that are constantly being evaluated. Since we know about a little over a third of the guys are going to get cuts that may stop them from fighting.
Thank you, Doctor. Is Mr. Wheelock with us?
You're muted, Sean.
Yep. Yes, sir. I am here. Thank
Oh,
you again
welcome.
to Executive Director Vela and to the Commission. Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, thank you again for having us on. I appreciate it.
We appreciate you taking the time and being here. Commissioners, thoughts, questions for the doctors, Mr. Feldman, Mr. Wheelock?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. You mentioned that about a third of the fighters get cut. In your data that you sent over, it's 41%. So is it a third or is it 41%?
No, it's actually 41% of the fighters have injuries and 35% have lacerations.
So 35%. And then my other question, relates to the number of no contests that you sent over in the data. It looks like more fights end in a no contest than knockouts and decisions put together. Is that correct?
No, unless I made a typo this morning. No, we only had 6 fights that have ended in no contest.
Okay, that you might want to check that graph because it looks like there's a very large number of fights that ended in no contest.
Yeah, I made the graph might be because of the scale, but and I mean just with Dr. Otka, he recognized that the data really hasn't changed much since the first 300 bouts we reported. We're up to 881 bouts, but only 6 have ended in no contest. It's probably just the scale on the graph. I'll have to take a look at that, but thank you for pointing that out.
Okay, yeah, on the graph, it looks like about 500 events have ended in a no contest.
No, that is clearly not right.
Yeah, Commissioner, if I may address that too, yes, as Dr. Mutsi just said, yeah, we've had 6 total end in no contest. None were based on injury. One thing, and Dr. Mutsi can speak about this too, Commissioner, is we see virtually no eye pokes, and I can talk about that as well as Dr. Mutsi and Mr. Feldman, and we see virtually no blows, no low blows on this. I can recall 4 eye pokes and 2 low blows out of 800 plus fights that we have in the medical sample. Dr. Mutsi, could you also speak about our hand fracture ratio, how that compares to MMA and boxing, please?
Yeah, statistically, there's really no difference. I mean, I've had folks say that it's lower. Our hand fracture rate's about 3.1%, and it's in mixed martial arts is 3.8%, 4.7% in boxing. That may appear to be different, but statistically, it isn't different. So you could just say it's the same. And I think it's for the same reason that Dr. Otta referred to, is that the blows they're just not striking as hard as they otherwise would with a gloved hand. And I should mention one other thing about concussions. Remember, this is a stand-up striking sport. We do not have any knees or feet to the head like you do in mixed martial arts. And as you know, the force of a kick, leg extensors muscles are much stronger than the arm. And I just do the football analogy. You can kick a football 60 yards. You can't punch one that far.
Mr. Chairman, Dr. Oda has his hand raised.
Yes, please, Doctor.
I'm sorry, that's an error. That was I did not intend to do that.
Fair enough. Commissioner Bennington, what thoughts have you?
Mr. Chairman, just a question regarding the weight loss, weight cutting regimen that bare knuckles fighting uses.
Sir, may I address that? Mr.
Please.
Commissioner, may I address that, please? One thing I'm very
Please
proud of in previous to working for BKFC and during my time as a member of the Kansas Athletic Commission, I chaired for 7 years the MMA Rules and Regulations Committee. What we passed, which unfortunately was never adopted, were new weight classes. Happily, Mr. Feldman had instituted those weight classes, which were then incorporated into the now ABC's Unified Rules of Bare Knuckle Fighting. So just as an example, MMA, of course, goes from 155 to 170 to 185 to 205 pounds. In bare knuckle, we started with BKFC with Mr. Feldman, but again, that's in the unified rules, which we adhere to fully. 155, 165, 175, 185. We have found by having those additional weight classes, fighters don't go through the extreme dehydration, the extreme weight loss. For instance, Mike Perry, who had the fight as a 170 in the UFC, will fight at 175 for us. Eddie Alvarez, who fought as a 155 and was a UFC world champion at 155, fights at 165 for us. My personal feeling as a layperson, but someone in combative sports for 19 years, is that by the added weight, giving fighters more options, we discourage that they have to go into extreme weight cutting. And that are, sorry, my phone is going crazy, extreme weight cutting, and that they are able to more safely enter a fight. We also do weight checks 2 days out where we put everyone on the scale. That's in conjunction with the athletic commission. So we have an understanding. I can tell you that Dr. Mutsi, the commission, and Mr. Feldman have canceled fights when they've seen someone who was just outrageously overweight. I think we had that within the last 4 months, who we knew wasn't going to make. So I can say personally, and I believe on behalf of the organization, that we take very seriously extreme weight cutting, extreme dehydration. I know as a layperson that that is one of the biggest dangers in all of combative sports.
You know, Sean, I can add a little bit more to that. Gentlemen, and Ken, I don't know if you were at the meeting this year and you saw the presentation that we did. We went ahead and we started to study the weight issue. It was real important to Mr. Feldman and myself to minimize this impact. So we looked at a total of 750 fighters over the last year, and we broke them into two categories. Those that had less than a 10% weight change and those that had greater than a 10% weight change. Now, when fighters know you're going to measure something, that's a good way to keep them from going to extremes. What we did find is if of those 750 fighters, 535 of them had less than 10% weight change. 192 had a greater than 10% weight change. The one loss record was 95 and 96 in those two groups. So there was no difference in their one loss record. And there was also, when you looked at injuries, there was no difference in the injuries, where they lacerations, hand fractures, whatever it is, between those that lost greater than 10% or less than 10%. So we encourage the fighters to work on their skills and not to cut, because it does not do them any good from the data we've collected.
Thank you. Commissioners, Commissioner Pennington, any other thoughts?
Mr. Chairman, I'm still somewhat concerned about the high level of lacerations that are experienced in bare knuckle fighting. One of the issues I have with MMA, which I have to subsume to the rest of the sport, is all of the elbows to the head of a grounded fighter with pretty much the intent on cutting them. I just watched a female MMA event, or actually boxing event, where, no, I'm sorry, it was an MMA event, where one of the females was cut significantly and all of the fight was just a bloody mess. I know that some people are attracted to that. I'm not. So that is a real consideration that I have, a real concern.
Fair enough. Thank you, Commissioner. Dr. Muthi, will you speak again to lacerations and your thoughts?
Yeah, well, let's. I totally respect the commissioner's thoughts on this, and I will admit that the optics look a little rough sometimes. But let's talk about lacerations. Lacerations are superficial injuries. So the skin is cut. Maybe we've had, like Dr. Otta brought up, we have to put in a couple of deep stitches. That fighter is going to return to fight again. 45 to 60 days, he's ready to go. That wound will reach about 90% of strength of the original tissue in about 6 months. Lacerations are a far more benign injury than are certainly traumatic brain injuries, injuries to the fractures to the or injuries to the knee, ligament tears in the knee. So although the optics are rough, in reality, lacerations are superficial and easily to recover from. And I'd like to hear Dr. Otto's thoughts on that too.
Yeah, please.
Yes, thank you.
Dr. Otto.
Yes, and this time I intentionally put up my hand. That was not a mistake. So, Dr. Muzi, thank you for that. A couple questions. Are the fighters for bare knuckle boxing, are they privy to this data set? Like, do they get, I don't know, kind of like almost like an informed consent where they are told, you know, hey, here's some data we collected, just so that you're fully informed on what you're getting yourself into. You know, a lot of these folks have done MMA, perhaps they've done boxing, traditional boxing, and from their experience from that, they know the risks. And as silly as this question may sound, are they aware that the laceration risk is higher than it is in the other combat sports they may have competed in?
Well,
Actually, Ken, that's not a silly question at all. Part of our pre-bout speech, we always have a meeting with the fighters before, and I'll talk to them a little bit about proper behavior, medical protocols, and so forth. I always tell them, I said, look, this is bare knuckle fighting. We know that 1/3 of you are going to have lacerations tonight that are going to need to be repaired, and we will do that here to the best of our ability. And so they recognize that right from the get-go, that they're likely going to get that they have a higher instance of being cut in bare knuckle as opposed to boxing and mixed martial arts. So that's part of our pre-bout speech at every event.
but I think even prior to that, Don, our matchmakers do alert the fighters. We don't supply them with the data, but we let them know that you're more than likely going to get cut in this. And I think I just need to say that most of these top MMA fighters that fight for us come back and tell us, man, I will do this any day of the week. I'll take the cuts because I'm healing in 2 weeks and I'm better. It's half of the damage that they're taking on the body, not just in the fight, on the training leading up to the fight. They're not hurting their legs, they're not hurting their knees, they're not hurting their back. They're just punching in preparation for the fights and in the fight. So I think the fighters themselves absolutely know exactly what they're getting into, and I think they would choose this for full body injury, 7 days a week.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. I guess maybe just a comment, which is that as a physician, and Dr. Feinstein as well, given his profession, we see patients that they do all kinds of crazy things out there. Some of them know what they're getting themselves into, others they don't, and we are here for them, so that they can live to see another day, and perhaps they'll go back to doing whatever sport or crazy behavior they were doing before. But we're here to ensure their safety to the best of our abilities. And so when I see something like MMA or boxing, bare knuckle, what have you, I'm sitting there at ringside, and my thinking is, gosh, these guys have a lot of guts to go up there and potentially have all these kinds of injuries that we see, but they go into it knowingly, and we are here for them. So I don't know if that adds anything to the conversation, but regardless of what we do here with sporting events, as a sideline physician, I'm prepared to triage and treat as necessary.
Absolutely, Ken. And I think that I've never seen you in action, so I'm not going to make a comment on how well of a ringside physician you are. I just know that Dr. Don Muzi is one of the best that I've seen, and the fighter's safety is always first, to live to fight for another day, because there's some little tiny cuts that didn't have a drop of blood on it, and I'd be like, Don, why'd you stop that? He said, because if it would have hit this, and I don't know the technical term, but if it would have hit this, he may never have been able to open his eyelid again. And he sees things, and I'm sure you will see those same things, Ken, and absolutely allow these fighters to live and go on to fight another day. I mean, the fighter's safety is absolutely 100% the top of our list.
Thank you. And
Mr.
Dr. Oda
Chairman.
is one of the best. We're blessed to have him. Yes, I'm sorry.
Were you recognizing me, Mr. Chairman?
I didn't know who it was. Yes,
Okay.
Commissioner, please.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So if you know that lacerations are a huge part of the event, who pays the stitch doc?
Promotion.
Promotion does? They take
Yes.
care of all the stitches?
Yes, we take care of that. Absolutely.
That's the only question I had, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. I would say Dr. Oda is, we're blessed to have him. He's one of the best. And if we end up doing this, he'll be pleased to have him ringside. It's nice to have so many doctors in the room. I'd like to get Dr. Feinstein back in the mix too. Doctor, your thoughts?
Yeah, I know, and I know we're getting pressed for time here, so I would just, I think it's a fair argument that that relative to other fight sports, you're sacrificing concussions for facial lacerations, and I think from a medical standpoint, I would agree. Probably over the long term, facial lacerations for the long-term health of the fighter are probably better than repeated concussions. I will say though that facial lacerations are not insignificant, and they can be disfiguring, and multiple, if every third bout you're having a significant facial laceration over a career, I could see that being quite disfiguring for people over time, and I don't think that can be minimized. And the second thing I think really relates to optics, to Commissioner Pennington's point. When a third of the fighters are cut, these are bloody contests, and whether that's clinically significant as a physician, probably not, right? Nobody's exsanguinating from these fights. But what are the optics of that related to combat sports? What is the general populace and the ringside fans think of that? And I think that's really the question that I struggle with the most as a commissioner. As a physician, I think I could be convinced that in the long term this may be safer than other combat sports. But for me, I share the concerns that Commissioner Pennington has of the optics of an event that will have a very significant laceration rate, resulting in a lot of blood in these contests, and how that relates to the overall perception of combat sports.
Thank you, Doctor. Appreciate
Mr.
everyone's
Chairman,
time. Yes.
David Feldman has raised his hand.
Yes.
Right.
Mr. Feldman.
I think that this stat could actually help ease a lot of people on the optics of this. I think that this stat will. Our female viewership and attendance was 4% for the first 2 years. It's now 22% of our viewership and 22% of our live or 24% of our live attendance. I understand that you would think that the optics are could make it unpalatable for people, but once you come to an event and you watch the event live, your whole entire vision on this whole entire sport will absolutely 100% change, just like it does for everybody. Everybody comes into it with a certain perception that didn't really watch it live yet, and then when they get the opportunity to watch it live, it changes everything for them. It truly does. And I really can't wait to do one here in Arizona if the commission does allow us to, and everybody gets to watch it live. And I would be very, very confident that everybody's perception is going to change on this.
Thank you. One question: when's your next event, and how could we possibly see it?
Our next event is October 12th in Marbella, Spain, and then October 25th in Denver, Colorado. And then we have one in England in November, and then November 9th in Montana, November 16th in Dubai, November 23rd in Los Angeles, December 7th in Poland, December 13th or 14th in Philadelphia, and December 21st in Florida. That rounds out the year.
That's quite a schedule. Congratulations. You guys are going great guns.
No, thank you so much.
We appreciate your time, and we've got a lot to unpack, obviously, but I think watching your events is critical. I think it gives you a really good feel for how that lays out. Mr. Vella, how do you want to proceed?
Mr. Chairman, if the commission has no further questions, I would just like to thank the Bare Knuckle team and Dr. Muzi and everybody for joining in and answering our questions. And I will note that I think it's important that the commission and everybody be aware that one thing that wasn't mentioned, right, is officials. And so knowing that, we will have very experienced ringside physicians and referees and folks officiating these contests, I think is noteworthy. We will very much be sure that anybody that we're assigning to these bouts is experienced in the bare knuckle realm and is experienced in combat sports and is making the decisions to keep fighters safe as we always do.
Yeah, well said. Thank you, Mr. Vella. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. It's
Mr. Chairman?
yes, please.
Mr. Chairman, one quick question. When was that Denver event?
October 25th.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I think it would be helpful for everybody to see these events. You also have some of your previous events available on YouTube and other places, correct, gentlemen?
Absolutely. We can also get you access to the app if anyone needs to watch certain events. But whatever you guys need, we can be of assistance to. Absolutely.
Okay. No, you've been so helpful today. More to come. I really appreciate your time, and we'll get this sorted, and we'll be in touch. But thank you all for your time.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman.
Whole commission. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask
Yes.
one more question for
Please.
Sean. Mr. Wheelock, could you
Yes, sir.
confirm how, in terms of viewership, when we're viewing these things streaming and such, how would you compare that to in person in terms of being able to see the cuts and the injuries and so on?
Like David Feldman was saying, there's a visceral reaction that everybody has, and that includes David Feldman, Dr. Mootsie, myself, when you hear bare knuckle fighting. And I'm proudly a gigantic fight nerd who has read a lot of books on bare knuckle from the 1800s, even the 1700s. I can bore everybody talking about Broughton's rules and the London prize ring rules, but I won't bore everyone. But there's a perception, there's a visceral reaction when you hear it. People think of a parking lot fight. Then you see it on television and it looks like one thing. And then you see it in person and it's something else. So I come out of mixed martial arts. I actually started as a pro boxing referee, and then I was in mixed martial arts and came to bare knuckle. I'm absolutely in love with this sport. I know Dr. Mootsie will correct me if I say that this is safer, because none of this is safe. Anecdotally, though, I believe that any fighter you speak to, be it coming from MMA or boxing, will tell you that this is safer. I'm in love with this sport. There's certainly a different perception. When California was considering, and we were legalized in California December 9th, as David Feldman mentioned, our Los Angeles show will be our third in California. In Denver, we invited their commission to attend. And then 2 months later, we had the vote. So we welcome all of you to attend to any events you want. We'll always work with you. We'll make sure everyone's taken care of. We'll accommodate you through that presiding athletic commission. And I believe there is certainly a difference of opinion once people see it. Even if people are supporters of bare knuckles, seeing it in person, it's different from what you think. I would even go so far as to say the biggest difference in the sport, in the world of combative sports, is not the lack of gloves, it's the 5 2-minute rounds. They're very fast fights. Dr. Mootsie talked about exposure. I believe that the 5 2-minute rounds are really the game changer in the sport. I think all of the great things that come from bare knuckle trace right back to the 5 2-minute rounds.
And Sean, could I ask you one follow-up question to that? Why is
Please.
it in person as opposed to on a monitor or streaming it?
You can see the speed. Danny, I appreciate the question. You can also see that fighters are throwing somewhere between 30 and 60% on their punches. when I teach the referees trainings for bare knuckle, and I'm proudly the only person certified right now by the ABC to teach the bare knuckle refs and judges courses. I did it at the ABC. Danny, I believe you attended in Louisville. I have 1 in 2 weeks for the Florida Commission, in October for the Colorado Commission, which again, I would encourage everyone to attend if they could, my trainings as well. I talk about the fact that you see unusual punches from unusual angles that you just will not see in another combative sport. You see a lot of jabs to the sternum. You see a lot of punches to the upper portion of the arm. You're seeing uppercuts to the stomach. You're not seeing traditional punches simply because fighters aren't throwing 100% or even remotely close to 100%. The two things I think that people notice when they're there is the speed of the sport, and that the punches are not nearly as impactful as one would think. Compared to MMA and professional boxing, I think they're significantly less impactful. I believe our concussion rate speaks to that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman, I have no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Vella. Thank you all, gentlemen. I really appreciate your time and interest, and we'll try and sort out Denver if we can. But thank you again.
All right.
And
Thank
I
you,
can
gentlemen.
certainly be a liaison through Mr. Vella, and we can get all of you accommodated, and we'll work with Tony Cummings through the Commission of Colorado. So I'd love to be the liaison through that to make that happen.
Appreciate it. Thank you. We will
Thank you.
we'll be in touch.
So appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Let's press on with this agenda. Item 5 is our legislative changes. The legislative changes adopted pursuant to SB 1679 are now in effect. The changes will be summarized and will soon be sent via email to all licensees. Any thoughts there, Mr. Vella?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I just have a quick summary. To be clear, this is not legal advice or in any way, shape, or form. Just in transparency, and so that our stakeholders and licensees can be aware of some of the more large changes that had occurred with the new legislative language. It is now in effect. So some of those changes are as follows. The term combatant was defined and used consistently throughout our statutes. The commission may adopt rules for MMA consistent with the unified rules of MMA adopted by another commission, or any alternative rules of MMA approved by another jurisdiction within the United States. This differs as we used to rely on the New Jersey rules. Weigh-in shall not be more than 1 calendar day before the scheduled time of the event, or less than 3 hours before the scheduled time of the event. That changed. It used to be a 24-hour window, and now it's 1 calendar day. Referees shall submit an annual physical exam and dilated eye exam. So now all referees, in order to be licensed, will have to submit annual physical and dilated eye exam. That was not before a requirement. Combatants who are at least 38 years of age must submit results of a stress test that is accompanied by a clearance letter and results of an electrocardiogram. That differs, as you know, used to be for combatants over 36 years of age. Now it's 38. Licenses expire 365 days after the date of issuance, and medicals expire 365 days after the date the medical exam is performed. That differs from what it used to be, which was that all licenses and medicals expired on December 31st of each year. Again, this is in no way, shape, or form legal advice, and everybody is encouraged to, this again is just a summary, so for more information, you're encouraged to review the updated statutes, which are posted on the AZ Ledge website, which is azleg.gov, and that's Title V, Chapter 2.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Vella. Yeah, it's a great piece to get through. I'm especially fond of the no more all licenses expiring on New Year's. That was always exciting. We have a land rush come January for licenses and medicals again. So I think it's a much better situation in every case. Let's talk about item 6. The NABF Awards and Recognition. Last month, the North American Boxing Federation, the NABF, recognized Executive Director Vella as Executive Officer of the Year and named the Arizona State Boxing and MMA Commission Commission of the Year. Congratulations, Mr. Vella. It's well deserved. You've done a great job, and it's it's nice for someone to say you're doing it well. I always thought we were doing it well, but it's always nice to have someone from the outside to say so as well. But Mr. Vella, please speak to this.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. It was very humbling, and I'm grateful that we've received those recognitions. I think those things just signify that we're on the right track, and we'll continue to improve and to do the best that we can to support the industry here in Arizona.
It's fantastic. You and I were talking about contacting the paper. I did get some time with Jose Romero over the phone, and we're going to talk later about this. So hopefully get something written about this too. That'd be nice. So more to come. Commissioners, thoughts?
Mr. Chairman, I totally agree that those were wonderful recognitions. It just goes to show when you have a very good executive director that they can pull 3 commissioners along to get Commission of the Year.
Well said, Commissioner. Well said. That's a lot of pulling to pull these 3 along, but great job, Mr. Vella. Commissioner Feinstein.
Yeah, just echoing the sentiments. Congratulations to Mr. Vella, and the commission is made up of so many people that put in such a great deal of work to warrant an award like this. And every time I go to an event, I'm just always impressed with how professional everybody is, and in particular, the culture of the commission at these events, where people feel comfortable to bring up concerns or problems. People feel like when there are issues that we talk about it, we fix it. And that's ultimately the culture that leads to the success that you've experienced here. And I think it's just more of the same, bigger, better events, and just excited to be a part of it. So thank you, everybody.
Agreed,
Thank
Commissioner.
you. And Mr. Chairman, I would just like to say, thank you to all of you for that recognition. And I, most importantly, though, I want to recognize obviously the tremendous support system that I have and that we all have. We have just amazing staff: Irania Felix, Norma Rivero, Caitlin Vanderkar, everybody on this call, Andrew Allen, Val Marciano, Juan Estrada, right? We have so many wonderful, wonderful people. Anybody that I didn't mention, it just tremendous amount of people that we have supporting our commission and helping me to keep things in order and continuously learn and evolve. So thank you to everybody, and this is a big, I think, win and in recognizing our entire staff. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody. Everyone in this commission seems to be rowing in the same direction, trying to do the same thing. Everyone's doing it for the right reasons, and that's heartwarming. It's great to see every Friday and Saturday night we get together. But it's nice to be recognized for it too. So this is a great piece. Thank you all. Mr. Bella, should we circle back to item 3? Is this a good time for the notion of an executive session?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I would think that it is.
Okay, then the chair would entertain a motion to enter into executive session if there is one.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we go into executive session to discuss item 3 on the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0. We are headed to executive session. Thank you all for
And
attending.
then we'll be coming back to regular session.
Yes.
Okay.
For just the last couple of agenda pieces, but yes, we will be coming back. This is Scott Fletcher.
Hello, Mr. Chairman. Looks like Commissioner Feinstein is with us, so we do have a quorum. Commissioner Pennington
okay, we do.
hasn't joined back in yet.
Okay, very good. Let's reopen the public session with item D, the call to the public. Mr. Vella, do we have anyone who'd like to chat with us?
Mr. Chairman, at this time, I do not see any hands raised, and just as a note, Commissioner Pennington is now with us as well.
Okay, great. Welcome back. Thank you. Item E is the call to the commission. Commission members or the executive director may introduce a summary of current event to ask questions and or make comments. Mr. Vella, anything you'd like to chat about?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to reaffirm my statement earlier about just how grateful I am to have such a great support system and our staff and our officials and everybody. Really, everybody's doing a tremendous job. We're seeing more events and as we said, double events and so on, and everything's running very smoothly. Our officials are continuing to train and evolve and become better, as are we internally, continuing to learn and evolve. Some of our events that we've recently had in August, for example, we had some events that went really, really well. Yukon LLC, which was Fabiano Aoki, he was on the call earlier. He had an MMA event. It was the first MMA event he had done because he'd historically done Muay Thai, and everything went off without a hitch. And I think he did a great job. We also had Rough in August and Iron Boy in August, and so all the events are going really well. And so kudos to our promoters and to all of our staff and officials for a job well done.
Thank you, Mr. Vella. Yes, and we have good promoters because you've helped guide them down that path too. So it's everybody pulling in the same direction. But thank you. Commissioners, thoughts?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Vella, would you get us and maybe distribute to all of the commission members the information that is needed for the December or the Denver event with bare knuckles? What was that, on the 27th, I think it was?
Yes, Commissioner, I can request
Or
that.
25th. Whenever. I
Yes.
just jotted a note, but I can't read my own writing, so.
No worries, sir. I will research it and I will gather that information for you and produce it to you.
Thank you.
Thank
you, Mr. Vella. Commissioner Feinstein.
Nothing from me, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I too am satisfied with a great session. I think that was very valuable and good things to come. Let's press on to F, the announcement that the next regularly scheduled commission meeting will take place virtually via Google Meets at 10 a.m. on Wednesday, October 16th, 2024, and is subject to change based on a quorum. Item G is an adjournment. The chair would entertain a motion for such.
Mr. Chairman, I move that
Mr. Chairman, I move we adjourn. I second it.
Very good. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. We are adjourned. Thank you all for your time.